Welcome at Diverse Faces of Surprise. Today I'm here with Cyndi Burnett. Cyndi used to be my professor when I studied creativity and change leadership. And she has been my advisor for my graduation on the power of surprise. So thank you so much for being here. And well, let's just kick it off straight away. So what is surprise for you?
What is surprise for me? I think a surprise is something that is unexpected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you had a choice to either get things to work according to plan or to get the unexpected to happen, what would you choose?
Well, I think I would definitely choose, I want things to go as planned, but I think I always try, there's the key word, try to be flexible that things may not go as planned and that I have to tolerate the ambiguity.
Okay, I'm surprised. Of all people, I would have expected you to pick a surprise.
I know, I definitely like things to go as planned, and I prepare and prepare and prepare.
Okay.
In hopes that things will go as I imagine them.
Okay, that's so funny. And why is that? What happens if you're not prepared? What happens then?
I think if you don't plan ahead and really think straight forward in terms of, all right, this could happen, or this could happen, or this could happen, or this could happen, or let's play it. I'm a trained actor, so I like to rehearse. I'll even have dress rehearsals with myself. I will perform for other people, my dog, my children. If I have to go and do a presentation, I always practice. So I really like, especially when I'm delivering my work, I really like to have some sort of practice and think about all the things that they might ask me and think about what might go wrong. I think about technology. So there's just so many things to think about, but I also remain open and try to stay calm if there is some level of surprise that comes in.
Okay. And is that also something, that's something that I recognize. I'm a big planner as well. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that when I plan something, that's the only way for me to let go. So right. You recognize, so when you do the dress rehearsals, if things go not wrong, but different on stage, then you can handle it. Is that a reason?
Yes. So if you think about it again, from a trained actor's perspective, you're on stage and all of a sudden, something, a piece of your costume falls off, and how do you manage that? And, how do you stay in that space, but still fix the fact that a piece of your costume might've fallen off. Okay. So I think just going through and playing with different scenarios is very helpful in terms of being able to let go.
Good point. So, but we all know you can't plan it all. So what role has surprise plays in your life? Like from a little girl on?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What role has surprise played in your life? Maybe even going back from when you were a little girl to any phase in your life.
I think the role that surprise has played, I think, you and I have spoken a lot about good surprises and bad surprises. And obviously life is full of surprises. And I think I try to remain open and curious and sort of in awe of good surprises. So if something surprises me, like I love, going out for my walks every day. So as I see it's spring here in Buffalo and I see the little bud start and I'm like, oh, there it is, and I get really excited over this. It's like wonder. So if you think about wonder relationship to surprise, like, oh, wow, that's really beautiful. Or, oh, that's not how I expected it. My husband and I play a really funny game where he'll tell me a story about someone and I'll say, okay, and someone I've never met before. And I'll say, okay, let me try to figure out what this person looks like from my perspective based on that story. And I'll tell him, I'll give him a visual of what someone looks like. And he's like, nope, you were totally wrong. Because, we play these things in our heads of assumptions, right? And to find out that our assumptions are completely inaccurate is always a good surprise.
True. Yeah. And can you share a specific surprise that stands out for you?
Sure. So this is, I've thought about this. I've thought about, big surprises, my children being born and my husband proposing to me, but I really want to share a small surprise because it goes back to that piece of wonder and awe. And I love to garden. When I was in an office every day, I tried to keep a plant alive and I never could do it. I would, and I was one of those people that said, oh, I don't have a green thumb and I just can't keep plants alive. And, I used to joke that every time a plant saw me coming, it would say, no, don't pick me, because I would end up killing it. So when I decided to start my own company, I got my first plant and I kept it alive. And then I got a second plant and then I got a third plant. And now I have probably about 50 plants in my house. I'm kind of a plantaholic. I love my plants. And the same is true with gardening. I love, growing things in my garden outside. And I particularly love sunflowers because sunflowers remind me of my mentor, Dr. Mary Murdoch, who died 12 years ago from breast cancer. So I love to plant sunflowers because they just bring a big smile to my face and they remind me of her. So every year I plant sunflowers in my garden. And every year the bunnies and the deer, and we have a lot of bunnies and deer in my backyard, come and tackle them. And it doesn't matter if they're tiny. It doesn't matter if they're this big. It doesn't matter if I've grown them to, 2 or 3 feet. The bunnies are always getting to them. So every year I try to tackle this challenge. I've sprayed different things that will deter the animals from coming on my sunflowers. I put cages like over each individual flower. I put a fence around that whole part of my garden. I've put a cover over the garden. And every year it's the same story. And this has probably been going on for about 6 years now, where every year I plant those sunflowers in some different capacity. I try something different. And then, I come outside and I'm like, they're okay. They're okay. And the next day I come outside and I'm like, they're okay. They're okay. And then the next day I come outside and I'm like, oh, come on. And all the heads are like off, like the bunny one tackled them down, or a deer came and ate the leaves off them, found a way to get into the cage, whatever the case is, they're always gone. So last year I bought some actually when the pandemic hit, I bought some raised beds, and in the raised beds, I have like vegetables and fruit and things that I'm growing in there. But I had my space of my sunflowers, and I planted hundreds of sunflower seeds. Then I had the cage over it. I had the wrap on top, and I sprayed all the way around it. I had a noisemaker that drove my children crazy, that if you walked past it, it would make this high-pitched squealing noise to, again, stop the animals from eating my sunflowers. But the one day came and I went outside and the sunflowers were all either pulled over or the heads were eaten off. And I was so upset because I thought I had won the sunflower battle and I wanted to have all these big sunflowers. So meanwhile, I gave up on the sunflowers and I continued to foster the flowers in my beds and the fruits and vegetables in my beds, in the raised beds. So all of a sudden I noticed this big, thick stalk coming from inside the raised bed. And I'm like, what is that thing? Was that like a cantaloupe or a melon? It's not something that, I just couldn't figure out what it was, because it was actually with all of my spices. It was my spices raised bed. And so I'm watching it and it's getting bigger and bigger. And it's got this huge, thick stalk. And it's just like in a circle and it's spiraling. And I just thought, what is that thing? But of course, I wasn't going to get rid of it because you just don't know what it's going to be. And that's sort of the surprise of gardening. It's one of the fun things about gardening is you just don't know how it's going to turn out or what it's going to look like. So my neighbor was over and I showed her, I said, look at this. I think this is going to be a cantaloupe. And she goes, Cyndi, that's not a cantaloupe. You know what that is? And I said, what is it? She goes, that's your sunflower. And sure enough, I had this huge sunflower that somehow the seed got into that soil and it grew beautifully inside this raised bed. Now my spices didn't do so well, but I think for me that surprise when it actually opened up and turned into this beautiful sunflower was that, we plant things all the time and we can try and try and try and try. And we think that spot or whatever it is that we're focused on is the right way to go. But in reality, sometimes things are growing, the thing that you really, really want, in another location. And we just have to pay attention to other things because we never know where that surprise will take us.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a good morale.
Hmm.
Wow, thank you. And what I always ask the people that I interview about the face of surprise is, how has it shaped your behavior, your life? And can you, even if it's a small daily surprise, can you reflect on how things like this, or maybe the specific example, affect your behavior?
Well, I think looking at it as an opportunity. So if we look at cognitive flexibility and being able to shift our perspective. So we're going down this path. And I actually did a Fueling Creativity podcast episode with Wendy Ross, where she talked about serendipity. And she defined serendipity as a moment of disruption that takes you out of your path and into something else, which is like surprise, right? So I see serendipity and surprise very similar. But, we take that opportunity to really look at where we could go and all the other possibilities. So if we don't look at it as, oh, this is terrible, but we look at it as a way that there might be other possibilities or more doors that open, or windows even, then we can see that this might provide a different kind of opportunity for us that might be more valuable.
Yeah. And is this something, because this sounds so natural, but is this something that's like in you, or is it something that you've developed over time, this mindset?
I think it's definitely developed with a lot of practice and teaching, because when you teach something and you stand up in front of a group of people, as you know, and you say, okay, we're going to practice cognitive flexibility, and then you don't practice it, then no one's going to believe you. So I think it's constant reinforcement and practice in terms of, okay, this didn't go as I wanted it to, but, and, usually it's an and then a but, it's going to be okay. And being comfortable in making those mistakes and allowing yourself to try something different and look at those potential opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I was at a surprise event yesterday. And even though surprise is a big thing in my life, because I just really think it's an important aspect to work with. Yesterday, the event was amazing, but new data kept coming, and in my agenda was I have to be there at 7, and then suddenly I got this message, yeah, but you have to be online at 6:30. I'm like, 5:30. I'm like, no, can't do that, because I have to take care of my family and have to eat. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm telling everybody to be open, flexible, and embrace surprise.
Yes.
And at the same time, when it hits me, I'm not so flexible. And I think first I was like beating myself up over it. And then right after that, I'm like, yeah, it's actually good that we keep getting this, because we keep, it continues to refresh your own thinking in terms of how to embrace it, I think.
Yes. And I think having a sense of humor around it also helps. So, sort of like laughing, like, oh, I thought the meeting was at this time. We're in daylight savings time right now. In fact, I thought our meeting was an hour earlier. Oh. And then all of a sudden I looked at the calendar and I thought, oh, wait, I got an extra hour. I've got an hour until we meet. And that was, I was like, oh, that's a wonderful surprise. So, looking at it like, oh, that gives me an opportunity to look into what I'm going to be talking about. And I think sometimes it's easy to just get like, oh, it's a bad day, or it's not working out as I want. But in reality, I think we can really look at those as opportunities.
Absolutely. So what would your life look like if there were no surprise whatsoever?
Well, I think it would be a little bit dull. I think it's interesting with the pandemic, we have been surprised in a lot of ways, in like, oh my gosh, the stores are closing, and we're not supposed to, all these like bad surprises. But at the same time, we've also sort of been living in what I call Groundhog Day in our house. So every day we'd wake up at the same time, the buzzard would go off, we would make the same breakfast, we'd have our breakfast, we'd play Wordle, then everyone goes into their offices, everyone does their work, and, we would go for a walk. The funniest was our family walk. So every day on this pandemic, we did the same 2-mile walk, and we'd see that, the one dog that would come barking at us, and then we'd see the neighbor that's walking by with her, little chihuahua, and, and it was just like, oh my gosh, there's just no element of any sort of novelty. And I think when you don't have novelty or surprise, then it sort of makes things dull and predictable. So having some small element of fun surprise can be amazing and joyful.
Absolutely, absolutely. You seem to be very at ease with surprise. It's what you teach, it's what you do, it's you think about it. It all comes very natural when you talk about it. And I can say that's not for everyone. So if you were to give a tip to other people who are not so comfortable with it, to embrace the unknown, to welcome more surprise in their life, what would it be?
I think just to acknowledge surprise when you see it. And I think surprise can come in very small ways in states of awe and wonder. So if we look at something and we go, oh, look at that, to enjoy that surprise and to embrace it. And when things don't work, to feel comfortable being uncomfortable. And I know that, it's sort of implied in the word discomfort to not be comfortable, but that it's okay sometimes to be like, that's a bummer. I wish that wouldn't have happened. Okay, now moving on, so acknowledging that within ourselves instead of just getting angry about it.
Yeah. So really instantly changing your mindset on how you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great tip to close it up with. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that I did not ask you, but you do want to tell?
I don't think so. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And for the viewers, this is it with Cyndi for today. Thank you for watching, and we will continue this series with a surprising new guest. Even I don't know who's next because I have a couple of interviews planned and I don't know who I'm going to be putting online first. But for now, thank you so much, Cyndi. And if you have any comments, any questions, please put them in the comments below. Thank you.